Welcome everybody, I am LoneWolfEX, and this is a guide to pain. Having recently beaten Baldur's Gate 3, I think the most uncomfortable scene in the entire game, no not you, comes as early as the middle of Act 1, and today, I'm going to show you how to get both it and the buff that comes with it. First things first, you need to make your way to the Druid Grove after getting out of the tutorial. There, you'll have an objective to find a healer among the druids. Diplomacy check your way into the actual Druid Grove, and then you'll end up having to decide whether or not a little girl gets murdered by snakes for petty theft. But that isn't why you're really here. You're here for this lovely gentleman, Volo. Hear him out, build a relationship with him, and he'll set off to investigate the goblin camp nearby. When you catch up with him, and it very well may be a while since beating the goblin camp is toward the end of Act 1, you'll find him waxing lyrical for his life and in need of saving. There are a number of ways that you can do this. And when you do, he'll join you in your camp. Talk to him and let him figure out that you're infected with a mind flayer parasite. He'll ask to inspect you, and much to his horror, you weren't bluffing. When he does the inspection, make sure that you tell him that you want to rid yourself of this parasite by any means necessary, which, to be fair, you probably do, and doing so will have Volo go off to research the particulars of such a procedure. You can see where this is going. The next time that you long rest after making a bit more progress, Volo will still be in your camp, but talking to him about his research will reveal more optimism than results. However, returning to the camp after this brief conversation will have Volo with an exclamation mark over his head, and this is the beginning of the end. Ask him the same question again, and he will usher you to the table. What follows is then a scene where you are given no fewer than 5 separate opportunities to back out of it, and if you're squeamish, you might want to. I'm just going to let the scene play out and let all of you intrepid enough to sit through it decide whether or not the buff you get at the end is worth it.
My research turned up a rather brilliant technique that seems quite actionable. It's not too deep, just behind the orbital socket. I could attempt an extraction. I've a needle in my tunic, after all. I assure you, I've dreamt of it 1,000 times over.
Volo carefully holds one of your eyes open and begins to prod uncertainly with the needle. The needle finds the gap between eyeball and socket. Volo frowns and begins to push. Pain shoots through your body as the needle snags on your optic nerve.
I think I have it!
The needle seesaws back and forth, plucking the nerve like a harp string.
Oh, bother. There's some obstacle in the way. I shall need a more robust implement.
Volo carefully withdraws the needle from your eye. Then, reaching into his bag, he produces an ice pick. Volo slowly brings the ice pick closer to your eye.
Now, don't move.
Cold metal presses against the skin beneath your brow. And then, tap, tap, stab.
I agree. It's a feisty critter. Just a little further.
Volo tears the pick from your brain with a violent jerk. Your eye plops down into the mud.
Drat.
He pauses, looks down at your eye, and recoils slightly as it sinks into the mud.
There appears to be an amount of cosmetic damage. Yes, quite. Well, there is some mild trauma. I can't help but feel partly responsible. Perhaps there is something more I can do. Take this. A far superior relic to that old jelly you were chained to. Try it on for size. And, it was very nice to have met you. I'm sure you'll sort out your little brain problem one way or another. Far away from here, if you've a heart. Terribly sorry, my friend. Ta.
For those of you who sat through that, or those who mashed through while looking away, you get to receive an enchanted stone prosthetic, with the ability to cast see invisibility forever, where ordinarily you'd have to use a class feature to detect unseen creatures, or both learn and use a spell slot to cast see invisibility. Your player character now just gains the ability to see invisible creatures passively as long as they fail a saving throw. This can come in very handy in the late game, where assassins will use a feature to go invisible as a bonus action, or even in the early game near when you get it, as Auntie Ethel will go invisible during her boss fight. And of course, you get all of this at the meager cost of letting everyone's favorite bard tear your eye out and lobotomize you with a rusty ice pick. Also, despite nearly everyone disapproving of this, Wyll actually has some words of encouragement.
Not to minimize the pain of Volo's poking and prodding, but I promise, you'll be used to the prosthesis in no time. Besides, I find it gives one an air of mystique. No one's more intriguing than a man with one eye.
Thanks, man. So, do you think the buff is worth the trauma? I think it is a little dependent on playstyle, but it's still really strong nonetheless. Let me know in the comments what you think while I work on the doctoral thesis of a review that I'm writing on this thing, and until then, I've been LoneWolfEX, and I will see you, yes you, next time.